The Texas justice system is messy, so let's break it down. You're listening to So You Got Arrested, the podcast that tells you what really happens after an arrest. Hosted by BRIC criminal defense attorneys, we talk to the people who've lived it, worked in it, and been shaped by it. Whether you're facing charges or just want to understand your rights, your options, and the smart moves that could change everything, we've got your back.
So Scott, I'm excited. We have former law enforcement officer on the podcast today. I've wanted to have a police officer investigation on this podcast to kind of give us the perspective of how somebody from law enforcement might view cases. So we have Mr. Greg Andrade, who is present helping us today. Greg and I are related. But Greg, why don't you introduce yourself, kind of talk a little bit about your background?
Okay. My name is Greg Andrade. I was on the police department for 29 years, San Antonio Police Department. My first 20 was on patrol. The last 3 of that was as what we call a UEDI. It's a uniform evidence detective. And soon after that, I was not promoted, but I transferred to a follow-up unit, a property crimes follow-up unit. And there we did investigations on property crimes. And that covers an array of topics, not just thefts and stolen items, but animal cruelty, et cetera. There's other, other stuff that we'd cover.
So in order to become a police officer, there's a, kind of a regimen of training that you have to go through to become, I guess, is it certified peace officer? Or?
It would be, yes, sir. You'd be going to the San Antonio Police Department's Police Academy. You get certified as a Texas peace officer. Then it took about 6 months from beginning to end, and you do go through an extensive amount of training, more than what TCOL now is called TCOL now requires, and we would meet all those standards before you could graduate.
I've seen the academy. I don't know if you've seen it, Scott. It's that
I've been out there to speak before.
Okay, it's over off Morrison. Is that right?
Right.
410. And I always notice it because they have this driving track. Yeah, where I guess the officers learn how to drive in hazardous conditions or,
I used to go out periodically to speak to all the detective in-services about family violence cases.
Okay.
So, that's a tough crowd. I'll tell you, a very tough crowd.
They can be. That's, I've always wanted to be somewhat of an instructor. And he took the course back in the day, I think 2011, with the intention of, when I retired teaching.
Well, that's what you're doing now, right?
I just got hired as an adjunct for SAC, the Law Enforcement Academy. I'm just beginning, so I don't know a whole lot yet as far as the process of being an adjunct. But I do have a lot of background information to give.
You're getting to teach, you're getting to instruct, you're getting to convey that knowledge that you accumulated in that 29 years.
Yes, sir.
So you said you started out on patrol for about 20 years. That must have been interesting, some of the things that you saw.
I liked it. I didn't take the detective's tests for the first time until about 15 years on the department. I just enjoyed being out there. I had my own district for a long time. I made...
Which substation were you at?
I was on the West Patrol, the majority of it. But I started off on South Patrol to Prue Road for a year or so, and then I finally said, I'm going to go to West, where I grew up on the southwest side of town.
Got it.
And that's where we had West Patrol service that area, and working in my neighborhood was a good and bad thing. It was.
Did you ever come across people that you knew growing up?
Absolutely. And sometimes they'd recognize me before I recognized them, and they would say my name. I'm like, oh. So only one time was it ever an issue where I removed myself, so I didn't, there was no question about anything that might have happened.
So, that's an interesting point that you raised, because I would see these TV shows and things like that. And in those shows, you would see the chief of police who says, we need cops who are from the neighborhoods and walk the beat and get to know the people in the neighborhood. And it sounds like that's what you were doing.
Yes, that's exactly what I was doing. And I did enjoy working in my neighborhood. But then when you come across people personal to you, like, people you grew up with or that you might know, then it's like, I don't know if I want to, be here. Not because I don't want to help them. It's just because you're like, well, what do I do? It puts you in an awkward position. So I moved to a different district. So they took me out of the Indian Creek district. And, well, they didn't take me out. I asked to just take a district not in that same neighborhood that I grew up in. So,
but I would imagine it helps to know the neighborhood,
absolutely.
Who the people are, who the players are, who the bad people are.
Right. When you can relate to everyone and like, no, I know I was here. I grew up here. I right down the road, or that's the school I went to. I understand what you're talking about. I know where you've been.
Indian Creek had a reputation when I was a prosecutor.
It does. And to some point, it still does. But when I was early 90s, I was on South Patrol, but then I went to West Patrol about in 98, 99. And it was one thing or the other. It was a gang member or just family violence, it seemed like at the time. So,
well, I was in San Antonio and growing up in the early 90s. And I remember at some point, there seemed to be this huge explosion of, I guess, gang activity. It coincided with the movie Colors coming out. That's just the way that I perceived it. That there was this movie out, and then all of a sudden you started hearing about all these different gangs, and that would have been around the time that you were.
Absolutely, it was. You were one of three probably prominent gangs, Bloods, Crips, or the Brown. They call them Brown. I don't know the exact term they used, but the Hispanics, it was a challenge. It was fun for me. When you're a young officer, you get involved in a lot, you do a lot, and you help out a lot of people. I mean, one way or another, you help them out.
Yeah.
So, you're on patrol for 20 years. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that because from time to time, we have clients who come in and they have questions or they have comments about when they were pulled over and things that happened and things that, they feel should not have happened. So I wanted to kind of address some of those things. So when an officer is making a stop, let's say that, you're just making a stop for speeding, there are still probably safety concerns that you have, even though maybe it's just a stop for a speeding ticket, right?
Oh, absolutely. When I was involved in a traffic stop or I initiated a traffic stop, it was obviously for a traffic violation. And when they would park in such a way that it wasn't safe for either one of us, I would definitely contact them, get some sort of identification, and then have them relocate as long as everything was safe to do so. So they sometimes just don't know. And I don't hold that. I never held it against anyone, not knowing what you should do, or you don't know what to do. Because sometimes you get young drivers that they're nervous or scared. And most people are nervous and scared. I get nervous if I would ever get pulled over. I would probably be nervous.
And so you talked about a situation like you're pulling somebody over on the highway and maybe they're jutted out into a lane or they haven't pulled over as far into the shoulder as they could have.
Right. They didn't make it a habit of stopping people on the highway, being a patrolman, but you would come across that every once in a while. And when I did, they would, I don't know if they did purposely or not, or maybe just didn't know, they would stop right at the edge of the shoulder where they would force you if you had room to go in on the other side. And I think eventually that was the tactic after a while, after so many, officers are injured or hit.
I think I've seen that now.
You start to move to the other side. And in my time on patrol, I did do that at some point because when you're that close and then you park your patrol vehicle tactically in a way that so if it is rear-ended, because we know it happens, it jets out away from the vehicle you stopped as well as you or the driver.
Yeah, I've kind of seen that now, and I don't know if you've noticed this, Scott, where the officers are going to the passenger side as opposed to the driver's side.
And I think it really depends on how much space you have, the traffic, how heavy the traffic is, how fast the traffic's going. I made it if I had to stop on the highway, I made it a habit to okay, let me give some basic information. Let me have your ID, please, and let's exit the next exit. So if ever there was a time where they had to pull off the roadway because maybe they didn't feel safe, I was always okay with it. Mm-hmm. We all police differently to a certain extent.
I've done that where an officer lights me up on the highway and I wait until I get to the exit to kind of.
Part of his weekly getting pulled over.
I tend to drive with what they call a lead foot. So. So one of the questions that comes up that people ask is, if I get pulled over by a police officer and they ask me for my ID or my driver's license, do I have to give it to them? And Scott, I mean, the answer is obviously
you have to give it to them. Now, it's not necessarily an offense unless you have active warrants. But if you refuse to identify and you got active warrants, you're going to pick up a crime.
Right. So it's my understanding that when we were trained and in the intention is to give them the citation for the traffic violation, they're being detained. You have probable cause to stop them. Issue the citation, but if they're refusing to ID themselves or they give a false name and date of birth, because we have access to go back to our laptop. Well, then it was laptops, but we have access to go back to our laptops and run their information. And the DPS, the Department of Public Service, would give us their driving credentials, and it would give us their information so that
sometimes it pulls up like there's no such individual.
Right, and that happens a lot when they don't have it. So I lost it. Okay, not a problem. What's your date of birth? Your ID number. And I would rather have had the Texas ID number because it would go right to who they are.
Right.
And then I go by a different. Well, that's my name, but I go by this.
Right.
Well, what's on your ID? And I always try to make it clear. Well, what's on your ID, or where do you live? Over there. Okay, well, over there. What's over there? Can you tell me what the address is to over there? And I can tell you, I made a lot of traffic stops in my time on patrol, and the majority of the people were cooperative. Sure. It's rare that I didn't have anybody that wasn't cooperative, although I can think off the top of my head right now that there was a few that just did not like the police for whatever reason.
Sure.
And I get that. I mean, I understand, nobody wants a fine. And that's not doesn't mean you're going to get a ticket every time. You might get a warning, which is essentially a ticket, but it's a warning. And it's my understanding it doesn't really go anywhere as far as.
But of course, if you were going to make a call between giving a warning and ticket, them being a jerk about the situation, how does that affect?
I think sometimes it does. It has. I guess it really depends on the aggressive driving habit that they may have had at the time, or the violation, or how hazardous the incident was. And then when you're running their ID, we can see your driving history. So we're scrolling, and then we're scrolling, and we're still scrolling. And you have a number of tickets. Odds are you're probably going to. Odds are that you're going to probably get another ticket. Whereas if you see that you've been stopped once and it was a warning, so you know what, this is just be careful. Just to let you know, this is wrong with your vehicle, or in this area you might want to take a different driving tactic through this area because of whatever issue it was.
I think a lot of people don't know, you had mentioned earlier the laptops in the vehicles. I didn't know that until I started watching police dash cam footage as part of my cases. The officers have laptops where they're looking things up, they're typing things up.
It's what it is. It's just it's a tough, I was going to say tough shit, but it's a tough laptop. I don't know what they are now, but back when I was on patrol, when they were introduced, because we used to have small little MDIs or MDTs, they called them. Now they're big computers, they're laptop computers. They're mounted well, and they're not going anywhere. They're heavy duty. Right. You can look up not anything, but anything that is going to help us in our job to help the people.
So let me ask you this: when let me give an example, because I have clients who come in occasionally and they ask questions like, well, why did the officer do this? Why did the officer do this? For example, there was a case that I had a few years ago where I had a client who he was a young man, and the officer's pulling him over, just going to write him a citation for speeding. And this young man, and I still don't know why he did it, while the officer's in the squad car preparing the citation, just takes off. And the officer, gives chase, gets behind him. Kid looks like he's going to stop and takes off again. And eventually the chase ends. The kid pulls off. This was in, I believe, Karnes County or one of these rural counties. Ends up in a dirt road where he finally comes to a stop. The officer gets out and draws a weapon. And I remember the family in that case being upset. Why did the officer have to draw the weapon? And I'm thinking, well, this is a felony. Yeah. And the officer doesn't know what's about to happen or why this person's running.
Because the assumption is you're fleeing for some bad reason, that must be a warrant out for you. Although that's not always the case, but.
Yeah, can you kind of speak to that? Like, what's going through an officer's head?
So immediately you're thinking the worst, right? He has to have a weapon. He has to have something so bad that he's going to go to jail for, or he or she, because we've had females take off too.
Sure.
So initially you're like, okay, I'm going to pursue this person or not, because you have to get permission. And nowadays, I don't think you can pursue. Under certain circumstances, you can't. They won't allow it. But
I didn't know that you get permission to pursue.
But too many problems with crashes during hot pursuit, and so they're more critical about approving a hot pursuit depending on what the circumstances.
It depends. Wow. When I was on patrol, still, it had to be. Didn't have to be felonious, but had to be a serious crime being committed or was committed or going to be committed. So when you get the approval, then you follow up, and then when you're stopping them and they pull over, and then like, okay, I'm good. Like, well, as an officer, you're like, no, I'm not comfortable right now. I'm not comfortable at all.
You don't know what's about to happen.
So oftentimes you will draw down. It really. And the training tells you to protect yourself and everyone, a third person also, if there's a third person involved. Protect that we don't know if there's anybody else in the car. We don't know if there's young people in the car. So you do it first and foremost for everyone's safety, right? And once they're under control, if they can being brought under control, because sometimes they don't want to go. Like I said, they could be a parolee and this is it, for whatever reason, or they do have the warrant that they don't want to answer to. It's going to turn into something a lot worse.
Well, let's talk. We're up against the break here, so we're going to take a break and we'll finish that off on the other side.
All right, sounds good.
The attorneys at Brick Criminal Defense have helped over 5,000 clients move on with their lives. When an arrest or accusation turns your life upside down, we have the knowledge, experience, and integrity to get your life back on track. Traditional legal ethics, modern legal tactics, the best defense possible to get you through the criminal justice system. Search Brick Criminal Defense to see our reviews and find out why so many of our clients have trusted us to fight for them. Brick Criminal Defense, helping our clients move on with their lives.
And so we're back, and we're here today talking to retired San Antonio Police Department officer Greg Andrade. We appreciate your time.
Yes, sir.
And one of the things that we were talking about is sometimes people have these misunderstandings or misconceptions about why officers do certain things. You were speaking to sometimes you're making these stops, especially if it's a stop involving a felony, and you're not just looking out for your safety, but you're looking out for the safety of others. You're looking out for the safety of a third party, and you're trying to control that situation.
Correct. And that's pretty much the whole purpose of when an officer does draw his gun. You're trained. It's been a long time since I've been trained, but it's when you're trained to protect yourself as well as the suspect or victim or whoever it is that might be in the car. And until you're comfortable with having things under control, then you could holster. And every officer is different. Even though you're trained a certain way, there's still officers that will cancel cover. They'll cancel cover even though you're told not to most of the time. And there's certain situations you've either been there before or you know the people. And that's where, knowing the neighborhood is important for, and being a good district officer, you get to know the people and you know your hot spots, and then you know the good people that are willing to help you. So once you're comfortable and you make contact and like that person goes, okay, now I'm good. Ended up they didn't have anything, correct?
Right. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever had these cases, Scott. I've had a handful of them. A lot of times when somebody takes off in a vehicle and they're evading in a vehicle, it's a felony. You automatically assume, well, the reason they're doing that is because there's some bigger crime being committed.
They either have like some type of warrant and they don't want to go to jail, or there's something like drugs or something in the car they're not supposed to have. And that's the assumption. But we've seen plenty of cases where they just panicked because somebody got behind them and just took off for some reason.
They have nothing. They have no warrants. They have no contraband. They have nothing. And then they just take off. And then you're right. They come to a stop and they're like, okay, everything's fine. But the officer doesn't know that.
Yeah. And we won't know until, and quite honestly, an officer is going to say, nah, you probably got rid of something, which is whatever. Right. We don't have it now.
They could have thrown something out the window during the day.
And that's probably, for the most part, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know for sure.
It's a felony now. Once they take off in a vehicle, it's going to be a felony.
Okay. And then that's where you pursue if you're given the authority to pursue. And if not, then you don't. And then I think a lot of officers, there was a time where the transition was taking place where they were doing, they were coming down, not coming down, but they were like not allowing some pursuits to take place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you look at it from both perspectives. I know I do now, being older and with the years that I had. In some cases, it might have been better to pursue, and probably most, it was okay not to.
Right. Yeah.
Well, because most of the time in a lot of those, we were talking about when you pulled somebody over and they took off, whereas, so you already know who you got.
Correct.
Where somebody just never pulls over, you know who the car is registered to, but you don't necessarily know who's inside the vehicle.
And sometimes that can be an issue too, because when plates are stolen and you run it and whoever they were stolen from, you just don't know that their plate was stolen until, you call them and says, hey, do you know? And I've done this several times too. Mm-hmm. Says, are you missing a plate? Goes, no, I don't think so. And they go outside and they go, holy crap, my plate's gone. I say, well, we have it over here. It was stolen and it's on this car now. We have the car, we have your plate. If you want, you can come to the pound and pick it up, or if you want to come by, we can release it to you, whatever the case is.
Right.
So, yeah.
So we have the holiday season coming up, and so unfortunately, with the holiday season, that brings a lot of people celebrating, having some cocktails, some drinks, and then despite what they should be doing, they take the road. And they hit the road and they've been drinking. Scott and I have talked about this previously, how, we see these CWI cases and inevitably on the video, when the officer asks, have you had anything to drink? The person in the vehicle says, yeah, I had a couple. Have you ever had a case where somebody said, hey, I've had a couple, and you said a couple? You should be fine. I'm not going to investigate. Just two, no problem. Go on your way. Have a nice night.
No, I can't say I've ever done that. Where I just had a couple. You have to go through your field investigation at the very least,
right? And
then you can make that determination after field sobriety or whatever it is that you're trained to do. And if you think you're borderline, there's a specialist, DWI specialist, who can come out and do other tests that would
the field sobriety test.
Yes, and then they may or may not be arrested. It really depends. Given today what we have available to us, Uber, Lyft, family. I mean, we've always had family that would probably come and get you. And sometimes you drink in excess to a point where like, nah, I'm fine. Most oftentimes you're probably not.
You're not a good judge of how
yeah.
And we see that all the time. I'll have people that I talk to who come in on a DWI, and when I'm talking to them about the case at the time that they're hiring, they'll say like, oh, I did the field sobriety test. I did all those tests, and man, I passed. I did so well on them. And, I don't understand why they arrested me. And then you go and you watch the video, and it didn't do well at all. I mean, and that goes back to the idea that we are not the best judges of how intoxicated we are.
We have a lot of people who insist that they looked good, and then we bring them into the office and show them the body cam that you have, and they're like, oh, I don't think I want to take this to trial after all.
So back when I first started, probably 30 years ago, we would do the field sobriety, and if there was any question and there wasn't a DWI to help you out and just kind of confirm some of what you see, you would take them to the ASAP office, and they would run another video. And it got even better there because when I started, we didn't have video.
Okay.
So that's why you always ask for a second pair of eyes, just to kind of confirm what, and then if not, you'd go to the ASAP office, and then there would be video in there, and they would have an ASAP operator that would run the cameras and perform the test again. And then, and that's where they had that old school, intoxicator blower, big old machine. I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But so there was, even back then there was, we checked and double checked, and I can say I didn't do a whole bunch of them. I did my share. I was truly a first responder. I had a district. I made a lot of calls that required sometimes a lot of hands-on. So it was fun. It was fun.
Well, and so, when in your capacity, you said you were a first responder. So what kind of calls were you responding to?
Anything and everything. So when we first started the academy, they made sure that we knew we answer 100% of the calls.
Okay.
So I've taken calls for flying cockroaches, believe it or not, because they thought there might be a dead body. And that with those details, okay, we'll go check it out.
Something smells funny around here, but it was just mom's cooking.
Yeah. And sometimes it was a body. Sometimes it was a body.
Oh, wow.
So
I imagine a lot of family violence calls.
Tons of family violence calls. On West Patrol, we got tons of family violence calls, drugs, thefts, robberies, stabbings. I mean, aggravated type offenses. So
yeah,
I've seen a little bit of everything. I don't say most police officers, but those who work in high crime areas and busy districts. I worked the B shift for a lot of years on the West Patrol, so it was super busy.
And then later, as a uniform evidence detective, you would be the person who comes out and starts collecting the evidence, taking photos of the crime scene and all that.
So I have to say, when that program started, it was still, we had what we were supposed to do, but not everybody agreed with it, especially patrol officers. Like, I don't want you in my district if you're not going to take calls. But so for the first few weeks, or probably the first year, we were still first responders. And then there was a couple of occasions, well, you're already there, just collect the evidence. I'm like, okay, so I'll do both. I am getting paid a little bit more, but I can do both. On certain cases, we can do both. And that became somewhat of an issue. They ironed everything out by now. And
we could talk forever about how hard it was to get police. Back in my day when I first started, we never had photos of family violence cases.
Oh,
I think that's part of the reason. Prints and photos.
So we had gotten a organization that was going to donate Polaroid. This is how long ago it was.
The old Instamatic.
Yeah, no, it's Polaroid cameras. That's what we used to get, Polaroid cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then the police, SAPD, didn't want their officers to have the Polaroids, and then they said, well, because we don't have a budget for the film. And then it turned out later, I found out part of the reason was the union contract said only detectives are allowed to take photos, not patrol. And so there's all these issues about who can do what. And it constantly goes back and forth all the time.
Yeah, so when the program started, they equipped us with really good cameras, and then we were responsible for photographs at most crime scenes, as well as fingerprinting, drug testing, some other
So you had the field test for the drugs?
We did have the field test, and we would be dispatched, and that's part of the reason why there was sometimes it might have been an issue, because there was a time delay too. Because when you ask as a victim, I want fingerprints. Okay, we'll try to get somebody here tonight if we can. And at the time, you only had civilians. Well, you had detectives that were a part of that CSI unit, but they weren't on patrol like they are, like UEDIs are. So it would take hours and sometimes the next day, and that really upset people. And I understand that, so that and photographs, now they're uploaded right after the end of the shift. They're uploaded, and they should be in the system.
Technology has improved your ability to do the work at the scene way differently now.
Well, and it used to be the case, because I've been around long enough I remember handling cases at the beginning of my career where there were no body cams. Yeah. I remember handling cases at the beginning of my career where there was no videotaped statements from the accused. They were handwritten.
With the warnings written at the top of the statement.
That's absolutely right. And so things have really come a long way since then. And it can be a good thing for law enforcement. Sometimes it can be a bad thing, because nowadays I think jurors expect that they're going to be able to see a video. And so if a video is corrupted or lost or misplaced or what have you, that can be a huge issue for the state.
So how many years were you in before you first started having body cam?
Oh, gosh, probably the first 15. I was on the department for a while, and it started with voice recorders.
Okay.
They issued like a little pager voice recorder, and then from there it went to the dash cams, and even those have changed. They changed once or twice before we ever got to what they have now.
Back then, when it was just the dash cams, I'd see the officers searching the guy under arrest in front of the vehicle.
Yeah.
So they could document everything you're taking out of this box.
Right.
And then
they would take it out and they put it on the hood.
Yeah, I think that's still a practice. It almost seems like it's still a practice. Even with the body cams, you still do it just because if the body cam doesn't catch something because of the angle, at least,
What was the advance that you had technologically wise that you felt most helped you do your job?
I think the laptops. I think it drove some people to retirement.
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't real happy with it myself because I'm not a computer kind of person. But once you learn the system, then it's what helped me out the most because you could come back and confirm things really fast. The returns were a lot faster, so you're not waiting to see if, a common name, you're getting hit after hit after hit, and then you got to see, okay, is that the date of birth? Then you have a hit with the same date of birth, and you're like, oh, geez, this could
You're
take
not
a
letting
while.
the guy go down the road and then you find out later they have 3 felony warrants.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. Well, wow. Okay, so it went by fast.
We could have talked for another hour.
Yeah, there's a lot.
We may have Greg back on another episode. Greg, we appreciate your time. Thank you for sitting and talking with us. This is So You Got Arrested with Steve Barrera, Scott Simpson, and Greg Andrade.
Enjoy the holidays.
Thanks for listening to So You Got Arrested. If you found this podcast helpful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. For more legal insights and real talk from the front lines of the Texas justice system, follow us and subscribe. And remember, Brick Criminal Defense has your back. For more information, visit us at brckdefense.com.